Hello guys, are you ready for the interview? So let me give you guys a little bit of rundown before I do a call of him, okay? So the person we're interviewing, his name is Roid, R-O-I-D, and he's in the same guild as Captain Jack and a lot of ex-League pros, right? He's known for some speedrun contents from other games as well, right? He ran hella school parties with ex-League pros and bunch of streamers. He's like a real, true Inferno Mode content enjoyer, especially super specialized with Inferno Mode Valtan. He mains Glaivier, but play a bunch of other classes as well, like Wardancer, Gunslinger, Artillerist, etc. For all Inferno Mode content.
저희는 솔직히 말해서 발탄이 나온 지 엄청나게 오래됐거든요. 헬
네.
컨텐츠가 나온 지 엄청 오래됐기 때문에 그때부터 했던 인원들은 지금 거진 뭐 1년 반, 1년 이상 발탄을 잡고 있는 거예요. 그러다 보니까 이제 일반적인 북미 사람들처럼 그냥 깨고 싶은 파티를 모으는 게 아니라 한 마리 팟이라고 진짜 말 그대로 그냥 발탄 한 마리 그냥 짧게 잡고 가자 하는 파티가 점점 늘어났어요. 그래서 오늘 한 마리 하자 하면 그냥 대충 모아가지고 따다다닥 해서 가면 한 30분 내로 잡고 오고 그런 게 이제 약간 한 마리 팟의 느낌이지.
Right. So I asked him about the hell mode, the Inferno mode culture in Korea, about the first pole party. Let's call it first pole party because when I translate it per word, it's like, so as you guys know, compared to the US, you guys got in Valtan maybe like a couple months. But in Korea, people have been killing Valtan for over like a year and a half, right? So how it usually works is you have a Discord group, and the parties are usually formed as, hey, let's get like a quick Valtan Inferno mode run right away, and then they usually finish it in sub 20 minutes. So it's basically like going for a tea. So the culture kind of changed it to that point, but I was just curious like how the culture, like a rating culture for Inferno mode is in Korea. So that's what I wanted to ask. And those are the stuff that the thing that I would want to ask is like, what makes like Hell enjoyable, like NA help it. I kind of want to know his opinion about NA Hell Valtan mode as well.
많이 봤죠. 뭐
He said
맛봤는
it.
것도 봤고요.
예.
많이 다르더라고요. 저희랑은 플레이 방식이. 와, 저
네.
깜짝 놀랐어요.
얘들 어떤 게 있을까요?
일단은 이게 저희는 이미 이게 오래되면서 정형화된 그 직업군이 있거든요. 근데 북미 분들은 이거 정화로 안 풀고 그냥 다 나가더라고요. 거기서 일단 처음 놀랐는데 그렇기 때문에 새로운 걸 경험하는 듯한 새로운 걸 좀 보는 듯한 경험을 많이 했습니다. 그거 보면서 그게 일단
Okay.
가장 큰 것.
So the thing I asked was if he has seen a bunch of Inferno mode in the NA streams and stuff. For example, some of the streamers that we know. And the answer was, he was very surprised how NA players play Inferno mode. It's not a bad thing, but the thing is, for example, I asked him, like, what are some of the things that are really different for NA servers Inferno mode? Is team comps. So for team comps, he has explained, usually when you do a proper team comp, first party usually has a Gunlancer and a Bard, and the second party usually have Paladin and Artist, but you guys don't have Artist, so it would be Paladin. And the reason why is at the second gate, when Valtan does that little 3 swings and then a big donut damage. So when you get hit by the axe hilt, it gives you a debuff, and you're supposed to purify it. That's why you put the Warlord Gunlancer in the first party, and Paladin on the second party, because he has something like Holy Protection where it cleanses. So you're supposed to cleanse properly. And he has some Inferno parties that didn't have a Paladin at all, or didn't have a Gunlancer at all. So it's like a very unique way that they try to beat the content with. So I think that's like the biggest thing that he found that was interesting in terms of how people are proccing Inferno mode. And which he did talk about team comps and stuff, right? So since he talked about team comps, let's go through a guide on like what are some of the team comps that he thinks that are really important for Inferno Mode.
그 북미랑 한국의 차이라고 느껴지는데
음.
한국 유저들은 이제 부러진 뼈 각인 영어로는 브로큰본이라고 하죠. 브로큰본
네.
각인을 주로 좀 많이 사용하는 유저들이 많아요. 그러다 보니까 이제 워로드가 거의 강제가 되는 거죠. 워로드가 이제
음.
일반적인 딜 워로드가 아니라 오롯이 무력화를 위한 워로드 세팅이 주를 이루거든요. 한국에서는
Oh.
제압은 딜을
Expertise, I
늘려주는
think.
거고, 네,
Expertise,
숙련은
expertise, right?
네, 맞아요.
Mm-hmm.
그게 이제 무력화 시켜주는 그 양을 늘려주는데 워로드가 그걸
Mm-mm-mm.
찍고 가가지고 무력화를 계속 밀어줘요. 부러진 뼈 각인을 든 인원들이 무력화가 계속 되니까 딜을 많이 뽑을 수 있고 그걸로 인해서 한국에서는 주로 이제 부러진 뼈 각인을 많이 쓰는데 북미 사람들은 아직까지는 많이 사용을 하지 않더라고요. 이제 호이나 파티에는 일반적인 그냥 노말 딜러들 3명이 들어간다고 보시면 될 것 같아요. 저희는
Mm.
뭐 거의 한 95%는 그렇게 출발한다고 보시면 돼요. 물론 서폿은 저희는 아티스트가 있기 때문에 도화가가 있기
Mm.
때문에
Mm.
조금씩 바뀔 수 있는데 그렇게 워로드, 바드, 호이나를 기점으로 5명의 딜러가 가는 거는 거의 모든 파티원들이 대부분 그렇게 가지 않을까 생각합니다.
Continuing from the chat about team comps, which if some of you guys are interested in forming an Inferno Mode party, generally, statistic wise, like 90% of the time, the engraving itself, like Broken Bone, is pretty popular, right? And what Broken Bone does is it gives you additional damage when the target is staggered. If you guys read the Broken Bone thing, it's not usually used in a regular play, but it's used in Hellbolt because it gives you a 40% increase in damage, which is really nice. So in order for that to happen, the target needs to be staggered, right? So the first party, they usually take a Gunlancer most of the time, and the Gunlancer builds full expertise where their job is to stagger, not do damage, which is also accompanied by Bard because Bard is good for bursting, right? With the 15% damage buff on her buff, and accompanied by Entropy class or a Broken Bone class. That's how they do for party one. Because if you have a Gunlancer in a party, you can actually utilize the strategy pretty well with that. And as for party two, if you add another Gunlancer, you kind of lack DPS because there won't be enough DPSs to cover the lack of damage. So what they do is the supports will have to have a purification, which it results into artist or paladin, right? But for NA's case, it will be paladin. So paladin will be pretty much almost mandatory for party two, within the whole raid group. And you have the 3 regular DPSs that can utilize Paladin's buff really well, which usually results into consistent damage classes. The thing that he wanted to point out was almost 90%, 95% of the teams that are willing to do the comp and then push Inferno Mode is that's how they form a comp usually most of the time. Which it should be a good reference for you guys if you guys are planning to run an Inferno Mode team.
일단은 이게 영어로 뭐라고 하는지 모르겠네. 조율서라고 이번에 들어온
Book of Coronation.
네, 네, 맞아요. 그게 들어오게 되면서 조금 제가 원래는 기존의
음.
헬타는 보석도 없고 세트 옵션도 없고
네.
그러다 보니까 밸런싱 격차가 어마어마하게 컸는데 직업 간의 밸런싱 차이가 그렇게 막 크진 않다고 봐요, 저는. 물론 뭐 그중에서도 직업이 더 특출난 직업이 당연히 있긴 한데 기본적으로 조율서라는 게 지금은 거의 그냥 일반적인 레이드랑 DPS가 비슷하게 나오게 되거든요. 왜냐하면 보석도 생기고 다를 바가 없어요. 일반적인 레이드에 비해서. 대신 이제 그게 밸런싱적으로는 크게 차이는 없는데 이제 조금씩 특출난 직업들이 있다 정도로만 생각하시면 될 것 같아요. 뭐
Continuing from the composition talks, and I know you guys are interested in classes, right? So I asked them about classes for Inferno Mode because you guys would be very interested in this kind of stuff. Because what classes are really good for Inferno Mode, etc. And when I asked them that question, so before, the balance has been a huge difference before our new Book of Coronation because this is a new Book of Coronation, and you guys have this as well. And what the big difference is, in Korea, the old Hell mode or the old equalized content, you had no gems, you had no tripods, and you had no set bonuses, and you had no runes. So you didn't have any of these. and you just had the skills, and you just add the stat points. So it was really, really, really clunky. So there were some classes were excelling. I mean, obviously the HP was like downgraded because the characters are weaker, right? But the characters are stronger, so the HP was like changed, I think. But because of this case, there were some classes that were super excelling compared to other classes, like Glaiviers, right? But now with the new book of coordinations, since some classes require higher tripods and all this stuff and gems and all these things, right? Because of this, I think that all classes are pretty much viable. As long as you're good and have a really good uptime. And I think this is really cool because this means that it is important to, just master your class and have a better uptime as a teammate. And some of the classes that he has recommended for great DPS and utility is Sork and Glaivier. He was a little bit worried about Glaivier maybe because of the actual control for it, but Sork and Glaivier is the stuff are the classes that he has recommended. And to continue, I'm going to maybe have him talk about more classes because he has experience on a little bit more classes. This is my notes. You can type in notes to access this. And again, he wanted to point out for this particular list, this is for Inferno mode only, because in Korea, what happens is we have bracelets, we have even higher level in terms of set bonuses, and we can even have higher gems. So there's so many of those variables. But Hell mode, you only have one book of coordination, right? So you kind of know which is better than the other because you're limited to a certain amount of tools that you can utilize. So he wanted to point out it again that this doesn't apply to any of the normal builds, which is very important for you guys to know, because sometimes when you explain this, they go, "Oh, should I swap my build?" But like, you don't, because it's for Inferno mode only. Okay.
Sure.
So with the warrior class, we had the destroyer. So when we talked about destroyer, was he had high vitality point. So we have gravity. Build goes broken bone for bursting during phases, and we have rage hammer built regular build for consistent damage, right? And then he said that it's not a bad class. It does decent damage. They both do decent damage, and then they don't like super excel as if the tier 0 and 1 classes that I've talked about. But it's a good class. It's a good class to have, right? And when we talked about Berserker's technique, the BT build is about the same as Destroyer, like decent damage. Mayhem, however, does decent damage, but vitality-wise is last place due to the engraving. So usually they will die in one hit. This is why he doesn't. So it would be really tough for Mayhem Berserkers to try Inferno mode because the vitality is in last place, just like playing Bard with a Grudge on. That's basically would be the vitality point that they're playing with. So they are going hardcore mode. I think that's what it is. Now going over Gunlancer, is a very important role, which is a stagger role. Blue Gunlancer, usually with expertise, going for stagger role, right? But Red Gunlancer, however, since their role of having Blue Gunlancer happen to be like stationed, like set in place, like if you have a Gunlancer in an Inferno party, usually their job is to do the stagger role. So the red tends to be a little like less popular, because when you want to play a Gunlancer, they usually go for that support role. So for Soulfist, he didn't meet any as much Soulfist players, so there's not enough data for it. But within the thing, before a long time ago, where we didn't have the tripods and the updated book of coordination, awakening damage was pretty important, because again, awakening damage, a spirit bomb, all that stuff is a good burst damage, right? Because obviously it can just add in all the synergies together. However, with the change in the book of coordination, where you have like the tripods, etc., everything, all classes, they got boosted in damage, but Soulfist stays still. So that's technically a nerf because it didn't get changed, right? So for Robust Spirit, there's not that many players in Inferno mode, so can't really have a good feedback for it. And but EO domination build though is what they usually do is, since you have the rune, judgment, and conviction, You use the Judgment Conviction Domination build, where you use Judgment Conviction rune, you activate it, you use your Awakening, and then you use your Awakening again to have that Domination buff. It's a safe build where they can utilize it. It doesn't do as much as, like, you know, Ignition Sorceress, but it does good enough damage to push whatever the progress that you need. Wardancer, they have way too many settings, and each builds have big DPS difference, right? All builds are viable, SO5, but the broken build itself, the class actually goes 1700 domination, where it has the highest broken bone DPS. So it is one of the higher tier DPS classes that excels in Inferno mode. So talking about Striker, he's in a higher tier because of his kit. For example, the Deathblade tier, he really excels at dealing concentrated DPS. For example, the lightning kick and then the uppercut, etc. And also wears an entropy set, where is one of the best entropy classes to utilize in Inferno mode. However, Esoteric, it isn't as popular due to its kit, because Esoteric works a little bit differently. Esoteric, you kind of cycle skills more, so he's more of a consistent DPS. So technically, in this case scenario, for my opinion, since the concentrated DPS is much better, and since it's free to change around, this build, Deathblade build, technically would be better in this situation. Okay, so as for Scrapper, he has seen less classes that's doing Inferno mode. So Scrapper is also an entropy class, but they tend to have the less kit to be consistent, to be doing consistent DPS on the back. For example, it's not a concentrated DPS compared to someone like Striker. So since it's probably troublesome to be maneuvering properly during the Inferno mode, but the damage itself is still very good, because just the damage itself is good. It's just that it will be requiring the player to play really well. That would be it. So talking about Glaivier, Glaivier has one of the best great balance overall, because she has a thing called a parry, right? One of the most OP skill for Inferno mode, which I have to agree, because I've seen it in action as well. Parry is nuts in Inferno mode, so if you're actually really good at the game, playing Glaivier might be a really good idea. Going over, control is okay, but it's missing that parry skill, right? And also control is entropy with going a lot of high swiftness, so it's a consistent damage entropy class. So it doesn't really excel into what is important to be done for Inferno mode. But for Pinnacle, the DPS isn't as high as compared to, like, let's say a Broken Bow Wardancer or a Ignition Sorceress, right? But Glaivier itself is a little bit in a higher tier due to its kit, as in the parry. Parry just makes it so safe and so balanced to do the progression. And the damage itself that they do is very decent overall. So even though the DPS is about the same on the lower section, their kit itself excels them to be in a higher tier. Gunslinger and the Hunter class, it's good class, low vitality. Rifles, handguns are better due to easier hit. You know, obviously this is a very fun, consistent DPS class. But, you know, again, low vitality. You die from like a couple hits and all these things. For Peacemaker, you know, in Inferno mode, you're forced to level 3 on all engravings, right? So Peacemaker tend to be a little bit less efficient. That's why they're in a little lower section in terms of DPS. But if PTR hits in, it could be a way better end up as well, because PTR Peacemaker level 3 becomes a little better. But even with that, it will still be a little bit lower than Sorceress, because Sorceress is as he explained, it was at tier 0, and there's a DPS for the Ignition, right? So they do better, like Peacemaker 3, they tend to do better damage at the end game, which is like, you know, the boss's HP needs to be under 50% in order for you to do the bonus damage. So there's that one. And as for Time to Hunt, when we were talking about Time to Hunt, he has never played with a Time to Hunt class for in Inferno mode. Deadeye, they're an entropy class. Therefore, all entropy classes should be working really well with a Gunlancer Bard composition, because Gunlancer has that synergy. The problem with Handgunner is, as he was saying, it's a little weird, as in like it's missing, it's not perfect, you know what I mean? Like as he was saying, is, let's say if you judge Handgunner as a DPS, maybe there's like a 2% missing, and as for stagger, maybe like 2% missing. So it kind of feels weird. So there's really no reason to do handgunner when you can do enhanced weapon and get a better result overall, right? So he recommends enhanced weapon. So going over Artillerist, he uses it a lot, even Cuckoo Hell. So the problem with Artillerist is they get a huge change in the PTR. So we're just gonna talk very simply on how his kit works and things. But the enhanced firepower with Nightmare Set and Swiftness is basically just good with stagger. So what he has said, but the problem is, since the DPS is so low, the stagger is super fast, but since DPS is not enough to a point that you don't get to push patterns really fast. So there's that issue there for Swiftness crit Artillerist. However, if the PTR changed, they got a lot of buff on this particular build. So we probably need to find out afterwards to see if it's good or not, because you will need to find out if this build is viable. But instead, what most people do in Inferno mode for Artillerist is the double class enhanced barrage. They use that 80-90% of the time, because that one yields much more damage but has about the same amount of stagger too. So this just happened to be a little better when you're doing it in Inferno mode. Okay, so for Scouter, you guys are getting it soon. So Scouter didn't get no nerfs on anything recently, but like not many people uses it on Inferno is because for Legacy Scouter, it is not super strong. It's just a very average consistent DPS. And again, the reason why the consistent DPS is a little bit less is because they use 2 gems, because they use the transformation gems, and that covers every single thing. So compared to the classes that uses multiple damage gems, you are supposed to do less damage, right? Because you're only using 1 gem for damage and cooldown. So it's a little safer to play, but a little less DPS for Legacy. And as for AT, is a very low population, as just much as time to run. He has played with a couple of them. It used to have a build, but now it has higher DPS than Legacy, because they use the more gems, and there's tripods as well. But again, the low vitality is the problem. The low vitality thing. As long as that one's out of the way, you'll be doing enough damage. But if you're aiming for something like a high DPS, like as to push further, having the highest DPS, this is not really the class that you should be relying on, I would say. But you will still do your job as a raid member with no problems. So Sharpshooter, he has seen a lot of Death Strike. Just Death Strike or double class engravings, right? It's the same case for Scouter. They do decent amount of damage and their range, but for super high ceiling, you wouldn't expect to play this class. And the recommendation for this class is for player who are planning to learn Inferno mode as a range specialist, this would be a good class. But again, instead of Sharpshooter, he kind of recommends Gunslinger instead, because Gunslinger is a little bit better in overall compared to Sharpshooter, even though they're both range classes, right? But even if, what's more important is, do you like the class or not? Do you like the playstyle? The playstyle and the class that you like is the most important factor for you to choose a class to practice Inferno mode. So it's basically to the point where if you want to play Sharpshooter in an Inferno mode, you would play the Death Strike, or you would play the double class engraving. It really sounded like I said it was smudge. It sounds like there's no real option to make it viable for Hell mode. Okay, so Sork, going really quickly, the main classes that he thinks is the top tier is the Sork. And this class has never been bad since release, and as you guys may know that as well, because there's a lot of Sork players in NA too, right? So without nerfs, this class is one of the best for even future Inferno raids as well, right? And if you talk about Ignition a little bit, again, it is one of the best DPS pushers for Inferno. Like you just turn on your Ignition, Doomsday Explosion, and Punishing Thunder. You basically finished up concentrated DPS needed to push patterns, right? And since this is a low risk, high return, it also depends on crit. And when you guys were watching the plays that they were doing, the patterns and the DPS, they were an actual important factor if they can push through patterns or not. So if the Sorceress didn't crit, you have to adjust. You have to adjust accordingly. But if Sorceress is crit, you can push patterns, whatever that they want. So when you say low risk, high return, just adding a little bit of side note is it depends on crit. As in, like, if you just land a skill, even if it doesn't crit, even if it has less synergy, the base damage itself is so high to a point that the output is just good, right? But if you consider high risk in not landing the skills, I've actually told him as well, it's like it's actually your fault for not landing the skill, not hitting the skill. So because that's why I didn't say high risk, because it's on you for not landing the skill, right? So the factor of doing DPS to push the bars to get to do what you need to do, and with the skill point that with the mechanical skills that you have, it is considered a little low risk, because as long as you do your job, you just output so much. That would be the point. Which it goes to the next topic, as Reflux is also it's a different playstyle, and Blink is really OP, right? With the versatile movement. However, compared to Ignition, it does much less DPS. But the thing is, some people play Reflux and Cuckoo because the Cuckoo moves a lot so much, right? Since missing your skill is a high risk factor, they tend to go, sometimes they go Reflux to actually rotate skills much faster, or they can land better, like they can land better skills, right? And again, let me tell you guys again, you guys have seen Sorc players that miss Doomsday all the time. That's why you think it's high risk. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to miss Doomsdays, guys, because if you know the pattern and where the boss is going to be, you're not supposed to miss your Doomsdays. That's why you don't say high risk. That's just you being bad, right? So let's put that to a consideration, because when people say if you think Sorc has a high risk return, no, because it's you guys just not hitting it. The Emperor is actually good. It's the same as when you say a beaver class, a bunch of beavers, right? What beaver class means, they have so many builds to a point that you have to build different houses, there's so many different variations of it. So both builds are really well. It's the same case for Wardancer, right? If you have good mechanical skills, you can actually excel, push DPS, and you can't even get MVP, as he said. Some of the players that he played with, they do get MVPs, and the classes that do get MVP, they do a lot of DPS, right? In terms of the kits that they provide. And as for builds, you have Empress is a little stronger in DPS, but it lacks a little bit of stagger. That's a disadvantage for say. But you guys don't have Cuckoo Seidon yet, but Cuckoo Inferno, there's some mechanics where you need to stagger, and maybe those are the cases that they kind of take hard on, to take troublesome points on, because they tend to lack deep stagger a lot, right? And it's a little bit of RNG in it, but on average it just does good enough DPS, even though it's RNG. So it can only go much higher ceiling if you tend to get a really good a source of cards and all the advantageous positions that you get. And as for Emperor, it's all about the same, but maybe like a little better stagger for like a little less DPS, right? And the playstyle, they're both completely different, and they're both completely viable, which is really interesting for the class. So if there's like an Arcanist, main out there, I think Inferno Mode, from the looks of it, it sounds like a good recommended class for you to try out to get better at the game. Plus, if you practice enough, you practice it, get good at the game, these are the class that will not let you down. So going over for Shadowhunter, again, 99% of them play Demonic Impulse, which is most case for everyone. And as for they recently got synergies too, where it increases damage. And transformation increases your total HP, so it's really good too for Inferno Mode. And same case for Scouters. They're exactly like Scouters. They transform. They have the gems for transformation skills. They don't excel at the top DPSs that the other classes do, like Sorcs and etc. But they still do decent amount as long as you have a good uptime. However, for Perfect Suppression, the issue is that there's so little amount of players that play Perfect Suppression, because if you play a Shadowhunter for Inferno Mode, most people do Demonic Impulse, right? No one really deliberately try to do Perfect Suppression. So theoretically, it does sound good because they have all the synergy, if you want to play there, it's not a problem, right? But people may not add you to the party, possibly due to little experience that they have played with Perfect Suppression Shadowhunter. So they technically would just take Demonic Impulse instead. Deathblade is very good. Has good synergy. It's also an entropy class with a better maneuver skills tend to be very nice. Like, you know, like they have Dark Exo. They can land. They can position themselves to the back very often. However, he also added the point that like some Blade players, they remove Dark Exo and add another DPS skill. That's also a viable thing. But usually, when you're doing like an Inferno mode as an entropy class, if you don't land your skills at the back, it is not as good as that's very bad. Like it's like in terms of like the risk over DPSs. So classes with easier time to access the back attack tends to be real nice as an entropy class, right? And to go over the builds, like Surge, 80-90% of them uses this engraving due to its concentrated DPS. And what I explained about concentrated DPS was what we talked about before, was for Inferno mode to push much further, especially when you have that broken bone build for Wardancer. You concentrate DPS based on the synergies that you get from the support, the battle items. They have it in a couple of seconds, right? So compared to remaining energy, where it has less impact than Surge, this is because you have all the skills a little bit spread out as a remaining energy because you need to rotate more. But for Surge, when you get that synergy, everything done, all be up, you just need to do your Surge, etc. to do the goal that you need required to do. Like you just do the job that you require for you to do, right? So therefore, Surge happens to be a little bit in the better end because they have easier way to just concentrate that DPS you need to push those patterns.
좀 조합이 특이할 겁니다.
특이하다고요? They say they brought a really unique composition for us, for the RNA boys. Are you excited, guys? I am. I want to see some high level plays. Yep, with the secondary category, he has some of the stuff to share with us on basic Hell mode, Inferno mode tips in as well, right?
그리고 이거를 북미에선 뭐라고 얘기하는지 모르겠는데 저희는 와이파이랑 급습이라는 말로 표현을 하거든요. 그래서 이거를 패턴을 뭐라고 얘기하는지 모르겠는데 백스텝을 하고 전방에 이렇게 세 개 긁는 거를 저희는 와이파이라고 주로 얘기를 해요. 네. 이건 캐릭터가 좀 다르긴 한데 백스텝을 하고 텔레포트를 한 다음에 이런 식으로 두 번 긁는 두 가지 패턴이 다 백스텝을 포함을 하거든요. 네. 근데 이 두 개를 구분을 할 수가 있는데 구분을 하기 좀 어려워하는 분들이 많을 것 같아요.
백스텝을 하면 또 다른 게
다른 게 있어요. 한번 보셔보실래요? 지금
Sorry about the backsteps.
백스텝은 해요. 백스텝을 하고 텔레포트를 해서 한번 긁고 피릭 하는 게 있고 얘도 보면
He does the backstep.
백스텝을 하고 전방에 세 번 긁어요.
The three scratches.
근데 두 개가 달라요.
But they're different. There's a tell you could do. 네.
백스텝의 방향이 달라요. 와이파이는 지금 이거는 백헤드 기준으로 백으로 백스텝을 해요. 보시면 백 그 표시등을 기준으로 백으로 움직여요. 그쵸?
So the Wi-Fi, his backstep is based on the back and head indicator. He moves back while the back and head indicator stays the same. So it's like a super backstep. Just a straight up backstep. 맞네요. 네.
백으로 가요. 그런데 아까 얘기했던 텔레포트하는 급습이라고 흔히 얘기하는 패턴은
But the teleport pattern.
아까 얘기했던 세 줄 피하는 것처럼 옆으로 백스텝을 해요.
Right. So he backsteps in a side, if that makes sense.
그렇기 때문에 그 두 개를 가지고서 비교를 할 수가 있어요. 그 비교를 하는 이유가 와이파이 같은 경우에는 처음 1타를 긁히면 출혈이 걸리거든요. 그래서 그거를 좀 방지하기 위해서 주로 저희는 비교를 하는 편이고.
Right. Because the Wi-Fi, when you get hit by the Wi-Fi, the first hit, you get a bleed stack, right? So you kind of identify if it's a Wi-Fi or not on those cases where he does the backstep with the indicator not moving.
그리고 한 가지는 급습이라고 하는 지금 이 패턴 있잖아요. 아까 지금 제가 보여드렸던 사이드로 잠시만요. 이 사이드로 백스텝하는 패턴 중에는 무력 게이지가 잠겨요. 무력화가 안 들어가요. 그렇기 때문에 이거를
이때
알아야지.
전체가요?
네, 이때 동안 무력이 전혀 안 들어가요. 그렇기 때문에 이 전조를 보고서 백스텝인 걸 알면 워로드나 그런 게 좀 워로드가 뭐 무력을 아예 안 할 수도 있고 좀 편한 게 있기 때문에 두 개를 좀
So it's a really important point for Gunlancer players, right? So when he does that sidestep, backstep, right, to do the teleport and the 360, you can't stagger in this point. So for Gunlancers, it's a time for them to just chill out a little bit and then do stagger afterwards. The indicator doesn't move. So those are the stuff that maybe like a Gunlancer stagger players to know to make sure that they do their job properly. Yep.
네. 그리고 제가 보여드리고자 했던 가장 중요한 게 이건데 이거는 아마
Oh, he wants to show you
북미분들은
very
모르실
important
거예요.
ones. Oh,
이거는
he said
북미분들은
maybe NA people might not know this tip properly.
이거 한국 분들도 모르는 분들 많거든요. 이거는 진짜 좀
그래요?
유용하게 쓸 수 있는 것 중에 하나인데 잡기
Even some
패턴
Koreans
이거
don't know.
그 잡기 패턴이라고 흔히 얘기하는 이 패턴에 대해서거든요.
네.
지금 잡혀가서 죽잖아요.
네.
이거를 진짜 쉽게 피할 수 있는 방법이 있어요. 지금 저는 피했거든요.
네.
아마 잘 못 보셨을 텐데
He got grabbed.
어떻게 피할 수
Oh, that
있을까요?
grab attack sucks.
대부분의 잡기를 아마 북미 분들도 그렇고 어글자가 딱 고정했다가 옆으로 피할 거예요.
네.
대부분이 다
네.
그럴 거예요. 그렇기 때문에 잡기를 그러게 이제 어글자가 판단이 안 되면 머리가 쭉쭉쭉쭉 돌아가다가 죽는 경우 잡혀가지고 죽는 경우가 많아요. 근데
네.
한 가지 방법이 있어요. 이번엔 어글이 저였어요.
네.
제가 어떻게 하는지 한번 보실래요?
Oh, what?
이렇게 하면 돼요.
It just went through him.
네. 그냥 머리에 딱 붙어 있으면 돼요. 그냥 보스 앞에 있으면 돼요.
Oh. Oh, so he's the aggro for the grab? So he just stood in front of him, just went through him.
이게 잡기라는 패턴이 멀리서 있으면 잡혀가는데 그냥 보스 앞에 딱 붙어가지고 가만히 서 있으면 절대 잡혀갈 일 없어요.
혹시 그 전 비디오에도 그렇게 서 있었었나요?
네. 지금은 제가 어글이어서 정중앙에 서 있었는데 전 비디오에는 제가 어글이 아니라서 다른 사람이 머리를 돌리긴 했어도 저는 코앞에 서 있었거든요.
코앞에
보시면 저는 그냥
그러네.
붙어
코앞에
있죠.
서 있는데.
그렇기 때문에 안 잡혀가고 이 사람은 잡혀가고.
So the grab mechanic, what happens is, since the grab, there's a initial starting hitbox in front of Valtan. That's why if you stand right in front of him, he just goes past you. I did not know that. 나도 몰랐네. 이거 버스 했을 때도 맨날 옆으로 피했는데.
이게 진짜 편해요.
Oh shit! I did not know that. I mean, how are you supposed to know? Because everyone dodges it by side, right?
글쎄요, 이거 그냥 하다 보니까 그냥 이것저것 하다 보니까 알게 된 걸로 알고 있긴 한데 저도
헬모드만인 건 아니죠?
아닐 거예요. 다 아마 동일하게 적용되는.
It said not just Inferno mode, probably for the thing, but it makes sense when you're in the aggro. His hand is in front of you, right? I mean, so the hand hitbox is behind you, so technically he dashes in the front. The hitbox is not right in front of him. Does that make sense? Because if you look at the first video, the Gunlancer was in front of his hand, but if you look at him, he was the aggro for the grab. He was right in front of him, right? The hand is behind him. Does that make sense? 어그로일 때 아니면 어그로 아닐 때도요?
아닐 때도 상관없어요. 그냥 보스한테
so
딱
even if
붙어
you don't have to
있으면-
be aggro, yeah.
네, 보스한테 딱
'Cause-
붙어 있으면 어그로든 아니든 안 잡혀가요.
Right. Because he did say every day he kills like 3 or 4 Inferno Valtans for fun, right? Which is crazy. Every time they do it, the raid leaders always say that when he does a grab pattern, always stick right in front of the boss. Always stick right in front of the boss. That's what they all say, and it makes sense. It makes sense. Guys, he was worried that like, oh, I think everyone knows this already. I'm like, no, just keep sharing, please. I mean, come on, dude.
네, 지금 보시면
we need all the stuff.
유령이 진입이 되는 거고요.
네.
유령이 들어가고 나서는 패턴이 그게 있어요. 아, 이것도 있어요. 창술단 저거 안 피해도 돼.
Right. The parry, so good.
그래서 제가 전룡새가 얼마나 사기인지 얘기했던 게 그 이유고.
Right. That's why it's in a higher tier, Glaiviers.
지금 휘린드를 했잖아요.
네.
여기서부터 이제 시작을 하는데.
네. So the ghost phase starts here.
두 패턴 1 특수 패턴이라고 생각을 하면 돼요. 두 번의 기본 패턴에 하나의 특수 패턴. 특수 패턴은 뭐냐 하면 아까 얘기했던 그 휘적휘적 그 벌티고 디버프라고 하는 그거랑 반격이 특수 패턴이에요. 나머지는 다 두 개가 일반 패턴이거든요. 그거를 기본 룰로 해서 유령이 움직여요.
Oh, so okay. So there's a basic rule for Ghost where he does 2 normal patterns and then he does 1 special pattern afterwards.
사이즈믹 한 번 했죠.
So he has a seismic. Yeah. 1
이거는
seismic.
잡기가 나온 거예요. 이러면 이
Because he did too
잡기도
much
일반
DPS.
패턴으로 잡기도 일반 패턴 하나 했다고 그 판정을 넣거든요. 그러면
And the
두 번
grab
했죠.
pattern is also normal. So he did 2 patterns, right? Now he's going to do the special pattern.
휘적휘적하죠.
Oh, okay. I see.
그러면 여기서 또 한 가지가 아까 두 개가 있다고 했잖아요. 그게
네.
반복이에요. 휘적휘적이 나왔으면 다음번에 반격이 나와요. 하나 했죠 지금. 두 번 찍기.
Yep, that's a normal pattern. It's scripted.
아마
And a normal
앞기압을 할
pattern
거예요.
again. Oh, front,
앞기압.
back, front. Yep.
이다음 반격이 나올 거예요.
And then reflect afterwards because it's a special
반격.
pattern. Oh, so you can actually know when
예상할
you're gonna
수
get
있죠.
reflect.
네, 예상할 수 있어요. 그리고
And then you have
일반
2 normal
사이즈믹,
patterns again.
한 번 더 앞뒤압. 이 다음에 휘적휘적 할 거예요 무조건.
And then
아니면
he does
이 잡이 나올
the
수도 있어요.
or he does the second grab or he does the 3 slashes because it's a special pattern. The special pattern is this triple slash and the reflect. So since he did the triple slash, he will do 2 normal patterns again, and then he's gonna do reflect, right?
네,
그 다음에는
그게 가장-
반격.
네, 이거 다음 반격이죠. 그 다음에 휘적휘적이 나왔기 때문에 두 번째 지금 삼칙하고
그러니까
있는
두
거죠.
번째. So
그럼 이
the
다음에
second pattern here.
반격이다. 이건 잡기가 나온 거예요.
Oh,
그럼
and
이
then you
다음에
have the regular. Oh, since grab is based on the number of lines, right?
반격.
Oh, okay. I see. So it follows the regular script, but if it collides with the number of lines or like the seconds to the grab, it just does it differently.
네. 그리고 여기서도 한 가지 또 있는 게 휘린드가 여기서
네.
주로 죽는 거는 대부분이 휘린드 때문에 죽을 거예요.
Oh, the heal. Okay.
근데 왜 그 휠에 죽냐면 잠시만요. 두 번째 휠이 언제 나왔지?
아까 나왔었는데.
그러니까 아까 한번 나왔었는데 원체 짧다 보니까 그럼 먼저
시간이
이거를 먼저
괜찮네,
얘기하면서
Whirlwind.
찾으면 먼저 이걸 다른 거 얘기하고 좀 찾고 있으면
네.
지금 이 바깥 쪽에 나오는 이 뭐라 해야 돼? 뺑소니들 있잖아요.
네.
이 교통사고 내는 얘네들.
네. The car crashers. Yeah.
네, 얘네들도 주기가 있어요.
Oh, they're also scripted. The side
맞는데.
charges.
10초마다인데 이 광폭화까지라는 이 시간 있죠.
네.
이게 그 뒷자리 초가 7이 될 때마다 나와요.
Oh, so
9, 8, 7 나오죠.
So every 7 second on that clock, it casts the side charges.
화질이 좀 낮은 것 같긴 한데. 어쩔 수가 없. 지금 여기서
네,
보면
괜찮아요.
8,
So, and
7
7,
나오고.
and then it does that little side charge again. Wow, so it'd be 2 minutes 7, 1 minute 57, 1 minute 47,
여기 나온다.
1 minute 37.
네.
That's
맞아요.
how you expect. Yeah.
이거를 왜 알아야 되냐? 다른 때는 크게 상관없어요. 근데 지금 나왔던 휠
네.
얘가 겹칠 때가 있어요.
Oh, okay. So reason why you need to know this is because when he does that whirlwind, it creates that pool at the bottom of your feet, right? Sometimes it collides with the little charge. Okay.
그러면
Yeah.
저희는 항상 아드로핀을 들고 가긴 하는데 대부분의 유저들은 여기서 시정을 들고 가잖아요. 그러면
네.
머릿속으로 이미 생각을 해야 돼요. 아, 이게 겹치니까 시정을 써야겠다. 라는 게 미리 알기 위해서는 저 시간을 확인을 해야 돼요. 지금
Right.
저희는 보시면 41초에 나오잖아요. 그러면 얘는 빨리 들어오면 안 겹치는 애기 때문에 그냥 저희는 신경 안 쓰고서 피하고 빨리 들어오는 거예요.
Right. So look at that. So you saw what he did was he put the pool away, but the pool started at 41 seconds. So they assumed that, oh, okay, so it's 41 seconds. It's not going to be collided together with the charging patterns on the side. So he's just going to go off. But the thing is, sometimes if it's going to be in a very bad situation where the two patterns collide each other, you use the time stop for it. Yeah, that's
그리고
nice.
한 가지 더 얘기를 드리면 휠도 정해져 있어요.
Oh, the whirlwind is also chosen. It's also scripted.
네,
Feels like
이것도
everything's
1분이거든요.
scripted. Oh, it's 1 minute.
네, 그래서 이거는 뭐 북미에서도 그렇게 하는지 모르겠는데 저희는 무조건 유령을 시작할 때 이게 휠에 그 나오는 조건이 있는데 어글자가 백에 있으면 휠인드가 나와요. 만약에 휠인드 쿨타임이 돌지 않고 있다고 하면 지금 보시면 저희가 8명이 다 백에 서 있죠.
Yeah.
무조건 휠을 뽑기 위해서 이렇게 서 있는 거예요.
Oh, wow. My mind's blown. So you guys notice there's the whirlwind pattern? Because most people die because of the whirlwind pattern, and you guys know that because I know that too. So what they did here, because you know how everyone's standing at the back of Valtan? If the aggroed person is at the back, he 100% uses the whirlwind pattern. So what they do is they aim to use that pattern and start the timer clock of 1 minute. Because every time you get that whirlwind pattern every minute. Yeah. That's nice. 그럼 거기서부터 바로 했으니까
거기서부터 1분 제한.
1분 뒤에 나오는 거죠. Wow.
네,
So everyone stands at the back.
지금
So look at here.
시간을 좀 보면 저희가 휠이 딱 시작할 때가 2분
네?
56초
So it was
정도거든요.
2 minutes and 56 seconds when the whirlwind started, right?
그래서 보시면 한 이쯤 가면 되겠죠, 그러면?
So around 1 minute 56. So 요거 다음에 나오겠네요.
아마 그렇게 될 거예요. 아니면
So after
이잡이
this
나올
normal
수도
pattern.
있어요.
Or the second grab.
이런 이 특수 패턴들은 그게 우선순위가 있기 때문에 그게 먼저 나오고
The special
예.
pattern has a priority over this. Oh, there you go. So, oh, now you're expecting to have this pattern around 1 minute 40-ish,
네,
49.
휠도 어느 정도는 계산을 할 수가 있어요.
Oh, so yeah, you can
그리고-
calculate whirlwind
네,
when it comes
그리고-
out too.
이 휠을 초반 휠을 저희가 왜 바로 뽑는지에 대한 이유도 여기 나오는데 54초, 56초에 뽑잖아요.
네.
그러면 아무런 문제가 없이 1분이 지나갔다고 가정하면 1분 56초에 나와요. 4초에서. 그러면
네.
차원문이랑 웬만해선 절대 겹칠 일이 없죠.
Oh, so also
왜냐하면 얘는 7초에 이미 차원문이 지나가고 6초나 4초 내에 필인드를 할 거기 때문에 거의 겹칠 일이 없죠.
wow.
그래서 첫 필인드를 바로 뽑는 게 저희 한국에서는 진짜 중요하게 얘기를 해요.
Ah.
특히나 마포 할 때, 데스리스 할 때.
Deathless, yeah. Wow, that's crazy. These are great tips. So for example, this is called pattern controlling, right? So when he spawns into ghost mode, everyone stays at Valtan's back to aim for him to do the whirlwind, right? And when he does that whirlwind for 2 minutes 56 seconds, right? So from 56 seconds to 47, when it's at the 7 mark, you have that charge pattern on the side, right? So you don't want the whirlwind pattern to stack on top of the charge pattern because they're gonna have no places to dodge, right? What they do is they aim to they maneuver the pattern first in the very beginning at 2 minutes 56 seconds to have the whirlwind pattern number 2 at 1 minute 46 at the earliest, up to like 1 minute 40-ish at the latest, right? But you still have enough time to dodge because you still have extra 4 seconds to meet the charging pattern. So this is called like a pattern controlling because he works at a specific manner.
잘못하면 스킬 없으면 사고 위험이 높거든요.
네, 실드가 안 까이니까.
네, 그렇죠. 이 패턴을 뒤로 미루면 미룰수록 한 번만 볼 확률이 높아져요. 원래는 얘가 한 쿨이 2분에서 2분 30초라고 주로 얘기를 하는데 얘를 휠을 계속 보면서 밀어버리면 한 번밖에 안 보고 유령을 들어갈 수 있죠. 그래서 이게 휠을 봐야 되는 이유고 그래서 저희가 휠을 어떻게 보는지를 연구해서 찾아낸 게 백에 있을 때라는 그게 연구가 된 이유가 이거예요.
Ah, so as everyone's staying at the backside, to persuade a whirlwind pattern, right? So when you persuade a whirlwind pattern, what happens in Valtan is when you do a whirlwind pattern, the special pattern that comes to, you know, the 5 counters, the shield to stagger, and then you have another special pattern. 그 또 뭐가 있었죠? 그 오카 잡기. The grab pattern, right? The grab pattern. Those are called the special pattern. And what happens is, if Valtan does a whirlwind pattern, the priority of those patterns appearing pushes back. So let's say Valtan does a whirlwind pattern, he does a special patterns way later because he did the whirlwind pattern, right? So what they have researched was, research was forcing a whirlwind pattern as much as you can to push DPS and see the special patterns as least as you can, maybe like 1 or 2 instead of like 3, to have them have less deaths, right? Or push much faster. Yeah, this is the stuff that he was talking about.
네, 그런 이유였고 얘가 이제 올라가잖아요. 이때도 힐인드가 초기화 돼요. 그래서 지금 플레이 하시는 분들 보면 다 이미 12시에 와 있어요. 왜냐?
So everyone's at 12.
여기가 백이고 무조건 휠을 뽑기 위해서. 근데 이거는 어로드가 어그로여서 아쉽게도 안 되고.
So the Gunlancer was the aggro because he had to stay in the front, right? But everyone stayed at the back to force a whirlwind pattern like that, the whirlwind pattern. 지금 나왔네요.
네,
뒤에 어그로가 가서.
네. 그리고 이것도 힐인데 이 임포스터라고 주로 저희는 얘기를 하는데 이것도 초기화가 되거든요. 그래서 보시면 피하고 다 뒤로 와요. 어떻게든 휠을 많이 뽑기 위해서. 그래서 바로 휠이 나오죠.
So it's again that whirlwind pattern because everyone's staying at the back.
그리고 뭐 일지파도 마찬가지로 이것도 초기화거든요.
So it resets at the major gimmick, as in like he breaks the stage, etc. So if you look at here after the break, it resets, right?
이거는 뭐 못 쳤는데 지금 보시면 지금 8명이 다 백에 있잖아요.
So everyone's at the
여기
back
한 명이
here.
없긴 하네요. 근데 이제 백에 있으니까 바로 힐인드 하는 거고.
And then doing that whirlwind right away. So the special patterns pushed again.
네, 힐인드를 많이 보면 볼수록 그 오카랑 잡기랑 그게 밀려요. 밀리면 밀릴수록 저희한테는 이득이기 때문에 저희는 계속 미는 거예요. 힐인드가 리셋되면 될 때마다 계속 쓰면서.
Right.
근데 이제 북미분들은 로케이션을 잡을 때, 포지션을 잡을 때 그런 게 좀 없더라고요. 제가 영상이랑 그런 걸 좀 많이 봤는데 백무빙이 잘 없어가지고 그런 걸 잘 모르시는 것 같아서.
Right. So when he was monitoring some US NA players trying out progressing Inferno Mode, the stuff that he has seen very often was people not tend to get the back positions. The more back positions you do, you can force different patterns. And when you can force patterns, you know what pattern is going to come out, right? Therefore, it'd be much easier for you to progress.
물론 이게 계속 백을 잡으라는 얘기는 아니고 그 특정 그 아까 제가 얘기 드렸던 임포스터나 뭐 지형 파괴는 다 마찬가지고 그런 좀 특수 패턴들 있잖아요. 영상이 출력된다라던가 아예 뭐 큰 이변이 일어나는 패턴 이후에는 다 휠인드가 초기화가 돼요. 그렇기 때문에 그 휠인드가 초기화되고서는 휠인드를 최대한 빨리 뽑기 위해서 백을 잡는 거고 휠인드가 한번 뽑혔으면 그때부터는 뭐 포지셔닝은 자유롭게 하셔도 크게 상관없어요.
Right. So correction was after a major pattern, right? Which is the cutscene pattern, as you see, the stage breaking pattern and all that stuff. After all that, the whirlwind gets resetted. So when whirlwind's resetted, everyone's trying to get on the back position to get that whirlwind pattern as fast as you can so you can push the other patterns back to not see special patterns is gonna be very tedious for everyone. Wow. This raid got researched so much to a point that there's so many informations for you guys to, just absorb, I think it's nice. It's real nice. Wow. As his closing meant, what he was surprised was when Inferno Mode came out, this is even me too, actually, where he thought not many players will be playing the Inferno Mode, but when he looked into it, a lot of people were playing. Actually, a lot of people were interested in Inferno Mode. Maybe due to the point that it's like challenging, and then maybe it kind of fits into the culture as well. What's important there is since he noticed that a lot of people were interested in Inferno Mode, and he wanted to spend the time to teach the global community about the tips and tricks that he learned from the past. All these kills that he had done in the past, right? And he wanted to get like a chance to talk to most of the global players, and then he got a chance to do it with me, right? With you guys, and you guys are listening in. And then he wanted to do it, and then he's glad that like he get to teach you some of the tricks that he knows, and then show you some of the higher level plays that we can do to hopefully to help you guys clear Inferno Mode much easier and have more fun doing it instead of just frustration, right? So with that being said too, like he's glad that he got to teach you some of the stuff that he knows, most of them, and he wishes that more Inferno players may enjoy the content, because Inferno Mode is a really good challenging content that people could do, and he just wished that more players to be interested in Inferno Mode. And I'm pretty sure most of you guys after the interview. Maybe you guys are interested in Inferno Mode at Inferno Mode much more, because I got interested in much more because of the big uptimes and all the tricks that he has shared, right? That concludes it, guys. Like he said, I wish a lot of people will be playing Inferno Mode, and at the same time, let's ask this question, which I'm going to say in Korean first. 그러면 혹시 나중에
네.
그 헬비아도 나오면은 같이 또 커버해 주실 수 있나요?
이게
헬비아.
제가 헬비아가 완전 메인은 아닌데 그래도 뭐 3개의 레이드 다 데스리스는 다 딴 사람이어서 뭐 어지간한 거에서는 조금 도움을 많이 드릴 수 있을 것 같아요.
Okay. So I asked him about, when Inferno Mode Vicus comes out, I asked him like, can you have a session with us again, talking about Hell Vicus, so that they can help you guys to get prepared, or when it's out, you can learn some stuff. And he has said that he has deathless titles for all of them, all the Inferno modes. So it'd be really nice for us to help us again, and then for you guys to progress much easier. So I was excited because Inferno Vicus is a content that everyone thinks is also unfair, like one of the super hard ones. So he's excited to see the global users trying out Inferno Vicus. Okay. So with that being said, this concludes the interview, guys. I hope you guys liked the interview. The editing might be 2 parts because it's been very long. I'm so grateful that he spent all this time to show you his group running Valtan Inferno, and teaching us all these great tips and talk about all the classes that you guys are interested in, like how does this class and how does that class do. All that stuff is so good, and I think again it might be a 2-part video for the YouTube viewers out there. And with that being said, this concludes the video, guys. Hopefully when Inferno Vicus comes out, we might have this session again. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, thanks guys. Bye.